The reading today is from Philippians 1, starting at verse 27. It can be found on page 1178 of the Pew Bibles. Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then, when I come and see you, or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in the one Spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel, without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you. This is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God. For it has been granted to you on behalf of Christ, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for him, since you are going through the same struggle you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing? Yeah. Anyone looking forward to the extra hour lion next week? Or is it just me? Just me. Okay. Today, for those of you, introduce myself. Those of you who don't know, my name's Chris. I'm a trainee Rev, known as an ordinand, in my final year at Trinity, which is a bit of a shock that that's coming around so quickly. So as going into this passage today has been quite reflective for me, and actually already hearing the incredible work of what Illuminate's doing. So I remember maybe 10 years ago when I was a youth worker, the Illuminate guys doing work, and we invited them when I was in Guildford to come and do a schools tour. And I just remember there was like no uptake. Like the churches, we were like, we haven't got the money for it, it's not going to work, kids won't want to come. And so it's so encouraging to hear what's happening in our schools and in our city about how this group has just been living this way, being faithful to what God's asked them to do so that it can bless so many young people where there's a hunger. So as we continue our series now, going into Philippians chapter 1, 27 to 2, verse 4, the title of A Life Worthy of the Gospel. I find that quite timely as well, actually, as I've been sitting there reflecting just for a moment of a life worthy of the gospel. A life worthy of the gospel. What does that mean? I'll ask you that question. What does a life worthy of the gospel mean to you? That word worthy. Gosh. Is it that sense of turning up on time, being punctual, making sure the fact that we are here and we're seen to do the right things? Or maybe we're on the other side, that we have all the head knowledge, we know everything, but yet we don't do it. What does worthy of the gospel mean? Last week, Wayne was talking about the passage just before where we learn of Paul's predicament, known as prison. And it wasn't really the kind of prison where we've got Netflix and catering and stuff. He could have just been left in that hole. But yet his attitude, the way in which he responded to his situation, was powerful. It was a testimony of God being faithful. Summarizing that phrase, to live is Christ, to die is gain. That powerful image of what it means to be a follower, to live a worthy life. So then moving into this section, as he's talked about how he's living, how he's doing, he wants to share that encouragement. He wants to share that encouragement with a group of people in Philippi, in this area where the Romans are causing trouble, as they did so much as we read throughout Scripture. But this isn't just a community. Like, people haven't gone, oh, I've heard of this church in Philippi. Paul, can you just, can you write a little letter to them, just encourage them? As if he had no knowledge of them. Paul knew them. Paul was there. Paul was there at the beginning. If you go back to Acts 16, you'll see Paul was there when Lydia, the only named convert that we have, a person of stature, most likely a wealthy businesswoman, selling purple cloth. I'm not sure how well that would do in a lucrative field now, purple cloth, but back then it was a big deal. And she gave her life to Jesus with her household. But not only her, there was the jailer and the slave girl who was free because of what the Spirit did, the slave girl that was making money for her abusers. She was used as a way, and when she was free, what happened? They didn't like it, and Paul ended up in prison. And the jailer, if you go back and read the story, you learn of how the fact that the door opened in the middle of the night, and he drew his sword ready to end himself because of the dishonor, because of the punishment that he was going to face. And he found Paul in prison with Silas. And at that point, these people became written as history as the church of Philippi. This group of people. When I look around a sea of faces today, I don't see the same face 150 times. I see 150, I haven't actually counted, it might be 147. I'm not trying to inflate numbers. Just of individuals with different experiences, a different life that you have led, a way in which you have come to faith or maybe haven't come to faith. Different styles of parenting, different schools. All of that coming together in one location. And if I know anything, when people are different, that can bring challenge. It can also bring beauty. It can bring something that is so powerful. So when Paul starts off this message, he's saying, live a life worthy of the gospel. It's a command to this community. It's a request. It's a plea for, please live a life worthy of the gospel. This small group, this small church, different experiences, different expectations, all trying to navigate life in difficult times. This isn't just a place where people are thriving. It was a rich area, but it doesn't mean the Christians were able to thrive with the persecution. Hostility and persecution were familiar experiences. It's not like, oh, I haven't heard of that. They knew of hardships. They knew the fact that there was difficulty. So again, Paul writes to them, encouraging them to live a life in a worthy manner, in one spirit. It's one community. Together for the faith of the gospel, living this way without being afraid. Paul knows what it's like to face persecution. So when he's saying live without afraid, he has that understanding that he knows what it's like to live with the intimidating forces, to live under a way in which you're going to get in trouble. You could lose your life. You could lose your livelihood. You could lose loved ones. You could lose so much for the gospel. But he's in this moment, he's saying, do this without being afraid, not retreating, not running away, not doing this alone, but doing this together. And that is what he's asking. You're not alone. You're doing this together with one another. One another together, unafraid. I don't know how long I'd last in that sort of situation. You know, someone comes in and calls me a name at school, meant that I didn't go and tell anyone about Jesus for a while because I was afraid. But also, I didn't recognize the fact that there were other Christians in my school. There was other places of support. There were other places that I was able to go to when it was difficult. But he's asking us to stay loyal. He was asking them to stay loyal despite everything. Hold their nerve. And let's just be clear, that's not an easy task. That's not an easy thing together. Live a life worthy of the gospel. Imitate Christ's humility. Okay, Paul, well, that's easy to do. I'm just going to imitate Christ, because that's so easy to do. He was God. He was able to do that. I can't do that. He doesn't realize the fact that I've got bills to pay. He doesn't realize the fact that I've got a game on Sunday. He doesn't understand the fact that I've got this and this and this and this. Our excuses, our reasons for why we can't do something. See, a life in which Christian attitude in both private and in public are the same, when you're living it, terrifies the enemy. Terrifies him. A community that is together. A community that's willing to forgive. For any Ted Lasso fans, someone willing not to fight back, but to fight forward. To forgive, to keep moving forward despite opposition, and to do this all in a manner where we mirror Christ's. We mirror his humility. We mirror his way of loving people. So our attitudes and actions are to model the message of the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. No small task. To be honest, I think if I was hearing this message, sit down and thinking, oh no, what have I got to do? As I'm writing this talk this week, trust me, I was really reflecting on my own sort of way of doing things. Am I living this way? Am I with my brothers and sisters? Do I have conflict? Do I have obstacles? Do I have frustrations that are stopping me from being part of one community in one spirit? Maybe that's a question for us to reflect upon, especially after doing the confession. I was literally there praying in my heart, like, Lord, please, I'm sorry. I've got things wrong. I've not made it about you. I've made it about me so many times. But Paul here is asking us to not do this our way. Because when we look at our cultural problem, we look at the world in which we live, you see, like the church of Philippi, our culture today has been influenced heavily by Greek philosophical thinkers. So much of how we conduct ourselves, that there's a lot of that mindset where the word humility was detested. It's not a word that was like that. That's the highest of praise, to live in a way that is humble. Humility was not something that was wanted. So Paul's speaking directly to that mindset which surrounding this community. And in verse 3, Paul says this. He says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. He's speaking to the same issues that we face today. We can pick that off the page and say, yep, I can see that today. I go on my algorithm, I see another influencer trying to get ahead. I go and watch BBC News, or other channels are available, and see politicians fighting for status. I'm in my workplace and I'm seeing people that will climb over anyone they can to get to the top. But where do I see humility? Where do I see a different way of living? You see, Paul is speaking to the same issues that we face today, both around the church and sadly sometimes in the church. So we must, as community, resist being elevated to what will turn out to be empty glory. I've reached the top. Oh, it's a bit hollow up here. I've made it. Oh, it didn't quite give everything that I thought it would. Oh, look at those bodies I've climbed over to get here. Paul is asking of us, pleading with us to live a different way. You see, so many leaders have been crushed by that pressure. Living and leading, when we put broken people, as we all are, in places of authority, the temptation to edify ourselves, to seek glory is so tempting. I know I faced that. When I was a young Christian, I wanted the stage, because that's where you're accepted. That's where you're a big deal. Now it's, please, Lord, don't put me up there. Please don't. Unless you've got something for me to say, don't put me up there. Because it's learning through trial and error of others to see those places where we have looked to elevate, the places where we've put our interest ahead of others, that we can see the fact that actually God's not being glorified. We can see that we are not living a life worthy of the gospel. We're living a life worthy of our own self-interests. You see, there's a global church. There are so many things going on that maybe our circumstances are, on the scale of things, aren't that bad. Got food on the table, got a car, maybe have 2 cars. Maybe have a subscription to Netflix and Disney Plus. Whoa. I'm a student, so I don't have that. But the fact is that maybe we don't feel like we're going through things, but there are people in our community that might be. So as one spirit in one community, how are we loving one another? How are we looking to the needs outside of our 4 walls, down the Gloucester Road, going past other churches, other communities? We are intertwined in something that is so much bigger than ourselves. How we connect with those places, how we love and support and encourage, even when we don't agree on everything. So when Paul's writing this letter, he knew what this church was going through. There was a love between them, supporting and encouraging. So that even if he didn't get to see them again, because he knew there was a good chance he wasn't going to get out. We might not be able to reach everyone on the other side of the world, or maybe the other side of Bristol. But we can speak well of one another. We can love one another. We can pray for one another. Are we willing to acknowledge and stand with our brothers and sisters in prayer and in action? Paul knew that fractures cause division. Paul knew the fact that actually when we have differences of opinion, the fractures can happen. It's why I remember this mindset, you might have heard this before a different way, around what's a closed fist thing and an open palm thing. In theological stances, what are the things that we're going to hold tight to and we're not going to fall out over? And what are the things that we can hold in tension without falling over the side? And I think that's a really important thing for us, is that when we engage in theology, it's far better for us to focus more on that central thing. And what is that? Christ's humility. The message of the gospel. We can hold on to that. As churches around this area, around this world, we can hold on to that with everything, because it's the power of the gospel, the message of salvation, the hope in Jesus Christ that transforms lives. So what can we do then? Don't know about you, but self-promotion and trampling on others doesn't seem to get people anywhere, so maybe that's not the best way to start. So where do we turn to live a countercultural life, where we can be seen as beyond reproach, which means without critique? You couldn't look at us and say, well, you say this, but you don't do it. If they were to, with people from outside our walls, they're looking at us under a microscope saying, I'm waiting for you to fail. I'm waiting for you to be a hypocrite. How can we be a community where the love of Christ is poured out into every area of our lives? Every passion that we have, every place of ministry that we find ourselves in, the people we come into contact with every day. And the answer is focused solely on fixing our eyes on Jesus. It's not a cliche, it's truth. Fix on your eyes on Jesus, life gets a bit easier. Doesn't mean there won't be suffering though. Doesn't mean there won't be challenging. It comes in the shape of the gospel, in the invisible image, within the visible image of Jesus that we read about in the scriptures. Paul in his letters so often points us back to Jesus for his humility. Paul just loves to bring it back to Jesus because he doesn't want it to be about himself, because he knows that that isn't the way that we need to be. Because of Christ, we are all citizens of heaven. He makes us one family. Now, years ago, I would have loved to have been in a church with people my age that sound like me, have kids my age, because that's what's important to me. I need to be around people all the same. God really spoke to me clearly about this earlier this year, where actually that's not what I'm supposed to be craving. I'm supposed to be craving community, to learn the uniqueness and the beauty of the people around me. More and more to see stories, to learn. I had a summer placement in Sea Mills, St. Edith's, and the community there just welcomed me for that month. And the stories I heard, the people I met, to know the fact like they're praying for me and my family for our future. You know, I was able to be part of that community that loves them, but they were so different to me. But yet there was something that was so beautiful, and it's because there is that thing that we have, that one community, that one spirit, that in Jesus we're united. We have that common goal. We're asked to strive together and not be afraid. When challenges come, what are we going to do? Are we going to be afraid? Are we going to run away? Are we going to go find security in other places? Or are we going to stand strong and say, no, Christ, I'm going to do it your way? No matter our circumstances, we can encourage, pray, and support one another. Because we share in this struggle together. We share in the story of Christ. We share in Christ's suffering. And from this, lead lives where we engage, we think, consider, and regard others, our minds turned outward, away from self-elevation, away from self-seeking ministry, away from sin. As a famous speaker once said, what's in the middle of sin is I. Let's not make this about ourselves. A life worthy is away from sin. It's a way into the way of Christ. Christ has invited every single person to be part of this. They might not know it yet, but in Christ's death, there's an invitation there. And our part is to share that message, to do this with tenderness and compassion, with a joy, to do it with an excitement and a buzz, like listening to these guys from Illuminate go around and share that message of Jesus faithfully for so many years. Christ's story is one of a servant putting others ahead. That's what was so countercultural to Greek thinking. So countercultural because it was not about I, it was about the we. It was about the servant-hearted nature of Jesus. See, the victory is already his. Jesus has already won. And we are benefiting from that victory. So then how this then affects our hearts today? Like I've already said, it's not a simple task. But can you imagine a community where everyone puts others first? Because that's what Paul said. Put everyone else first. Who's going to look after me, though? If I put everyone else first, what about my status? But the good news is, if I put Wayne's needs first, and then he puts Nick's needs first, and then you put Izzy's and that, everyone's needs are then looked after, aren't they? Which would include me. Together, we would look after one another, doing that in that sense of unity. Like a well-choreographed play, everyone knowing their parts. I saw Hamilton last year, and honestly, the way in which they did some of the movements of the chairs, just the chairs, the choreograph. But if one person got it wrong, it would stick out. But actually, as one community, we can do this. We can hold each other. We can support one another. We can love one another. That's the gospel life. A single mind focused not on our own interests, but on the interests of others. We aren't being asked to be all the same. I'm not asking you all in uniformity to dress like Clark Kent, as somebody told me as I arrived today. So, oh, Clark Kent's here, great. But you're a shorter version. That was the other part they said. I said, maybe I've got a bigger personality, never know. But I'm not asking you to all be the same as me, God forbid that. I'm asking you to be the best version of you, where Christ is the author of your life, to make you the best possible version of yourself, based on the image of him. It's about the inner life of unity and the practical outworking of that unity. How you love one another behind closed doors. How you speak of people, think of people, when you've had people do wrong to you. I think that's more of a challenge than anything for me sometimes. Called to do our part and to be accountable for our mistakes. Which is why the confession is so important. For it's like, no, I realized I've got this wrong. And thank you for that forgiveness, Lord, that you've given to me. So on a practical level, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was one of the great minds of the 20th century, killed in 1945 in a German concentration camp, he had this to say about 7 examples of what it can look like for living with a single mind. Here's the challenge, guys. Here's the challenge. Community that hold their tongues, refusing to speak uncharitably about a Christian brother or sister. Oh, failed that one. Cultivate humility that comes from understanding that they, like Paul, are the greatest sinners and can only live in God's sight by his grace. Listen long and patiently so they understand their fellow Christians' needs. Refuse to consider their time and calling so valuable that they cannot be interrupted to help with unexpected needs, no matter how small or menial. Where's your time? To bear the burden of their brothers and sisters in the Lord, both by preserving their freedom and by forgiving their sinful abuse of that freedom. Can you forgive? Declare God's word to their fellow believers when they need to hear it. And finally, understand that Christian authority is characterized by service and does not call attention to the person who performs the service. As theologian N.T. Wright says, the most interesting person in the room is the person sitting next to you. Is the person next to you. I've just seen a few of you look at each other. That was quite a funny thing. Like, oh, you. You know, I think, oh no, me. But if you had a load of celebrities suddenly turn up, or people that was your hero, would you still find the person next to you the most interesting person? Thinking of their needs. Because that's the challenge of us. To live a life worthy of the gospel is a challenge. But it's a witness. It's power to change lives. It's power to transform communities. Because to live as a Christian means seeing your own story as a lived expression of Jesus' story. We are a community. And the Spirit is the thing that enables us to do that, that loves us and encourages us to do that. So what I'm just going to do now is actually give an invitation. An invitation now for anyone that maybe is hearing this and thinking, I'm on the outside, I don't think I've ever believed in Jesus before, all this stuff. But Jesus is giving every one of us an opportunity to say yes to this way, to live a life worthy